In this video, I'm going to be repairing a hole in preparation for laying down some ceramic tile. You can see I've already taken off the floor, the foam underlay, I've peeled up some old linoleum, and I've peeled back a little bit of plywood as well. So here's the hole. It's actually from a leak that occurred around my door. I fixed the big hole previously, but now I still got this existing hole that I found when I peeled back the remainder of the floor. So you can see that I've actually added some wood under there to catch the corner of that new piece of plywood, but I need to add another piece of plywood and remove all this old chipboard. Conveniently, it's actually really close to a seam, so there's going to be another floor joist right there. So I actually don't have to remove very much to get all the way to a floor joist. And when you're doing this, it's generally, in my opinion, best to take it right out to a floor joist as opposed to having to build some sort of structure underneath the plywood that you're putting down, because really you're going to need all four edges to be supported. You can see that I've got a small hole on the left hand side of the door. I'm actually not going to worry about that because no one's going to stand there, so I'm not really too concerned about that actually breaking. So I think that'd be a wasted effort. But I am obviously concerned about this one, that people are going to walk past all the time and are going to stand right where that hole is when they're going in and out of the door. So to do the removal, I'm using just an oscillating tool, also called a multi-tool. You could use something like a circular saw, but you could run a greater risk of hitting a floor joist, and obviously I don't want to do that. This is only going to take a few minutes to cut out, so I've gotten triple speed here, and it'll take about 30 seconds. You can see that I've insulated under there as well as part of my basement work and put up some vapor barrier. So I'm going to take it right to the center of the existing cross member that I put in. So when I was doing the woodwork under the door, I had to go joist to joist with the wood underneath that one new piece of plywood, obviously, so that'd be in place. So I've already got some of the wood there, but I am going to have to add a little bit of wood to what's under this piece already. I'm doing this in smaller pieces just so I can ensure that I'm keeping it nice and straight and that I'm always under that 1 2x10 that's underneath the floor. I do have some other videos of floor repair, and I'll throw the links in the description as well. But this one is good if you just want to do a simple repair and don't need to get too detailed or build up too much. So you can see that I've cut it out pretty squarely. Now I have a good structure to screw in a new piece of plywood to on 3 sides, but I do have that one side that's now open. And also there's some of the oriented strand board that's underneath the wall that doesn't have any support. So I'm looking at about a 9-inch piece of wood that I need. So I'll cut a 9-inch 2x10, and then I'll cut a piece of plywood to fit on top of that hole. So I actually got this 2x10 for only $8. It is treated, though you don't need a piece of treated 2x10. And it was $8 because it was in the junk wood bin at Lowe's. So because I'm only using 9 inches, I don't really need very much of it, and I didn't want to spend the full $40 on a untreated piece of 2x10. For this little section, 9 inches, I don't really think you need the full 2x10. I wouldn't do a 2x4, but probably a 2x6 would, be adequate. But I got a 2x10. So I'm using a pry bar, and I'm not using normal construction screws. I'm using these structural screws that have a much stronger shear force. They're longer and they do bite in better. So I'm using a pry bar to keep the 2x10 level with the existing floor joists, just sort of lifting it up, because sometimes when you jam a screw in, it sort of sucks things down a little bit, but by having the pry bar there, nothing moves around. So you can see I did 2 through the top. Obviously there's not too much room to work in this area, and then I'll level it out, and then I will take a couple of the sort of normal smaller construction screws and jam those through the sides, because I do have that long extended drill bit, so that helps get deeper into the corners. And I'll do that a few more times. So in total I put in 4 of the structural screws and 4 of the construction screws, so 8 screws in total. 4 of them are really good, the other 4 are okay, and you can see that I've got it under the oriented strand board, so that piece that I've cut out that's under the wall is also supported, so that won't move around, or if the wall dips a little bit, it'll still have something to hang on top of. Obviously, if this wasn't an exterior wall, I wouldn't have the insulation, but because it is an exterior wall, I'll just put that insulation right back in place. Obviously, it's a little bit tighter now that there's a 2x10 in the way. and then I'll measure everything up for the piece of plywood. I could use more oriented strand board or chipboard, but because I have this 3/4 inch plywood in the garage, I'll just use that for now. I will come around with a belt sander and level all these off so I don't have any harsh edges between the OSB and the plywood. And to attach the plywood, I'm using flooring screws. For the other stuff, I did use flooring adhesive, but I also find that this construction adhesive does a good job. So I'll slam down some construction adhesive and then put the piece of chipboard in place. It doesn't have to be a super tight fit between the plywood and the chipboard, as long as both the chipboard and plywood are well supported by the 2x10s underneath. That'll prevent any flexing and it'll keep your tile from breaking. I use a lot of screws for this. Generally speaking, I would have used 8 screws on this. However, because I got a little bit of a split up by that knot, I did put in a couple extra screws. So I'm actually at 10 screws on that piece of plywood, and then I'll come around across the OSB. All those areas that I cut also don't have screws, so I'll come across those and make sure that those are screwed down as well. And when I put the screws in the OSB, you can see it moving a little bit, so obviously that is pulling it down and tightening it back up. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I am going to take a belt sander and sand down all the edges so that there are no hard transitions between the plywood and the oriented strand board, and then I should be ready to go to start tiling. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.